Certainly, we are facing very complicated times with a low prices environment, and of course, our industry is one of a lot of uncertainties, and now we are also hit with another one that was unexpected, that is the pandemic of the COVID-19. In this environment, very complicated environment, certainly is very critical to be each time more efficient and operate really at a low cost as possible. If we really want to survive and success in the oil and gas business, we really need to be disciplined in security protocols and investing in maintenance. It is always a less cost to invest in preventive maintenance than the cost that we need to face when we have an accident. Certainly, this is very critical. Security measures can also be efficiency measures, such as digitalization and remote control of plants and operations. At IHS Markit, we have documented individual cases of implementation of digitalization efforts that has helped to reduce costs between 10 and 25%, also increasing productivities upwards to 8 to 10%. It also enables safer and more environmental sound operations. So about that and a lot of other issues, we are going to talk this morning. Thanks for the speakers in these panels. We have really a very good experienced people here coming from certificates companies and advisory companies in terms of security. And of course, we have the presence also of the regulators in those matters. So thank you all for joining me today and to discuss these important issues with the audience. I would like to start with José Luis, certainly to ask you about the measures that has been adopted in the industry, in the Mexican oil and gas industry, facing the pandemic of COVID-19. So this situation has really highlighted the problems about security that are pre-existing, I think, in our industry. How do you see that? Is something we have learned, is something that we need to do right now to face these problems? Which are the opportunity areas, or what is the most important issues that we have to approach at this moment?
Bien, muy buenas tardes. Gracias, Alejandra, por esta introducción. Creo que has dado un contexto bastante bueno de lo que nos ocupa en este momento, obviamente principalmente a los regulados, sin dejar pasar lo que hacemos nosotros los reguladores. Y bien lo decías, esto es inesperado, y haciendo una metáfora de lo que conocemos, digamos, en accidentes de gran impacto socioeconómico. Este viene a ser el cisne negro que nadie esperábamos, que era increíble que ocurriera, y hoy lo tenemos aquí. Y si bien nos había avisado desde fines del año pasado, a principios todavía no creíamos que llegaba a esta zona de América del Norte y el Caribe. Sin embargo, lo tenemos, y ha pegado de diferente manera en diferentes actividades del sector hidrocarburos. Y, por ejemplo, la cuestión de lo que veo más grave, más complicado, es el tema de trabajo en plataformas donde la concentración de personas pues es mucho mayor. Por lo tanto, el riesgo por contacto, por exposición a este riesgo de COVID pues es mucho mayor. Y obviamente las medidas son muy diferentes a las que se pudiera aplicar, por ejemplo, en tierra. En tierra hay diferentes mecanismos o jornadas de trabajo donde una persona puede ir a trabajar y estar en un campamento, o puede ir a trabajar y regresar a su casa y socializar de diferente manera. Creo que aquí finalmente lo que enseña esta pandemia es que dentro de los lineamientos que tenemos en la agencia están los protocolos que tienen que ver con la respuesta a las emergencias. y una emergencia sanitaria también debe ser considerada. Sin embargo, nunca se previó que fuera de esta magnitud. Este virus obviamente llegó de una manera que nunca esperábamos y se tiene que trabajar o replantear la cuestión de los perfiles de puesto relacionados pues con esta condición de riesgo. Ya lo mencionaban en la ponencia pasada, de que muchas de las operadoras han hecho un muy buen trabajo en relación a las medidas que tienen que tomar para garantizar que las cuadrillas estén, digamos, en una cierta concentración previo a ingresar a las instalaciones de aceite y gas, pero han tenido problemas en contratistas. Se sale pues del control inmediato y pasa a una situación en donde ya viene una situación de salud pública que se debe abordar de una manera más integral. Yo creo que esto, pues aquí en la agencia igual nos tomó por sorpresa y pensábamos nosotros que después del 10 de mayo ya estaremos regresando todos juntos a seguir con esta dinámica. Sin embargo, no sucedió así y pues bueno, tenemos que continuar de una manera más coordinada, obviamente estableciendo, como tú lo comentabas, algunos de mecanismos de comunicación efectiva que permitan la interacción entre el regulado y el regulador para, de común acuerdo, establecer algunos canales de comunicación donde se permita vía virtual establecer la comunicación formal que veníamos manejando siempre en papel. Entonces, creo que por ahí va el tema, mantener y mejorar la comunicación efectiva entre regulado y regulador.
Yeah, that is critical. I think it's really the commitment from a lot of pieces, right? It's not only the operator, it's the subcontractors, it's the regulators, and of course, it's all the possible providers to the industry. So Gareth, if I ask you in the same lines that Jose Luis, how do you see we are facing this pandemic and the measures that has been taken, and of course the missing pieces and what we can improve?
Certainly I can say a few words on that topic. I like the reference to the black swan in the previous discussion there, because I think across the industry, it certainly was a black swan type event. The pandemic has had an influence across, obviously, oil and gas, and much broader than that across the industry and on a global scale. What we've seen in terms of best practices when we think about it from that perspective, in terms of responding to the incident, we really see two key aspects. One of those is with regard to mitigating the exposure in the first place, so reducing the possibility or reducing the risk of getting infected or getting an infection on board. And then the second aspect is actually with responding to it and the measures that should be put in place to actively react to it. From an ABS perspective, we have developed a guide on the topic to support the industry, and that guide sets out and reinforces many of those best practices on board offshore assets, which are also just as applicable for onshore type facilities as well. So some of those items, for example, are setting out protocols with regard to specific locations on board or spaces that can be used for isolation once a suspected case is identified. Some of the other items are associated with the ventilation system on board. For example, locations where patients may be located to make sure that there's a suitable ventilation in that area, and more specifically to make sure that the ventilation arrangements are not going to contribute to the spread of the infectious disease on board. The other aspect is with regard to the physical response after there's an incident on board. And part of that are the protocols that many companies have now developed. And those are with regard to responding to it, to quarantining the individuals, to notifying other parties that are engaged, getting the patients moved off the facility to the correct and appropriate locations. Coming back to your original question, which was what can we learn from this aspect from it? I like to look at this through a positive lens. While it's certainly a significant issue across the industry, with significant influence to health and safety, there can be some positive aspects extracted from it. And part of that are some of the lessons learned that we as an industry need to build on. You talked about some of the vulnerabilities that already existed in the industry from a health and safety perspective. And certainly this is an opportunity for us to collectively to learn from that and to prepare. Obviously, this is this situation from this year, but we don't know moving forward as to what other outbreaks there could be. So collectively, we can learn from the experience and make sure we have those protocols and plans in place so that if there is another event in the future, we can accommodate that accordingly.
Yeah, thank you, Gareth. Good measures that you have been observing. So now I would like to turn to Eckhard. Welcome to this panel. And if you can comment us a little bit about what do you see as an areas of opportunities and current best practices in terms of cooperation between regulators, operators, third parties, service provider. Certainly this is a problem, as Gareth was mentioning, we need to learn and move forward collectively. So what can you see about current best practices or what we can improve here?
Yes, thank you very much, Alejandra. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah. This panel is about safety, maintenance, and integrity, and those topics are very much at the heart of what we do as DMVGL. Our purpose is to safeguard life, property, and the environment, and we're doing this through the provision of certification, verification, risk, and asset integrity services. And in Mexico, we've been active since 40 years, was 120 colleagues in 4 offices, and I've been working with Pemex and now with most of the new operators. Your question in general is very broad, and we could talk about this for a long time. So I will limit myself to some examples of where I see areas of opportunity for this. Yes, has already been mentioned, this year was very complicated for all of us, and we are learning now how to best cope with the pandemic and how to minimize the impact on our business. Another consequence of the pandemic has been the collapse in oil price, as you mentioned, which for sure will be here to stay for some time more. And of course, that puts pressure on the budgets of our clients and will likely affect investments in integrity services. And that may cause serious problems soon, especially for older installations. So this is a big concern. A big area of opportunity is doing things remotely. We had already prepared ourselves and offered this before the pandemic, with the main drivers then being cost and time reductions, and also to increase the quality of the inspections by being able to involve world-class experts in real time. So we could have someone renowned in a specific field sitting in Oslo and dial him into Mexico. Now with the pandemic, we see a lot more acceptance of remote services from our clients, as travel, of course, is restricted, dangerous, and time-consuming, as many times you have to quarantine. And also it's not advisable to have larger groups of people come together. So we are now offering this from our side, quite successful for site inspections, hazard meetings, and training courses, and we've done a lot of that in Mexico already. And we see that better uptake for that now. Another challenge caused by the pandemic has been to obtain and update accreditations with the different regulators in Mexico. There's a lot of our activities we perform as authorized third party. And of course, that will affect the safety and integrity of the installation of our clients, as we cannot provide the services as efficiently as in normal times. Unfortunately, lately we have seen the situation getting better with more rapid replies, but we still believe there's room for improvements through better communications, and that of course would benefit the whole sector. So I think I'll stop here for that question.
Thank you, Ek. Francisco, what can you comment about this need for cooperation between all those stakeholders? And of course, we are here talking about optimized risk management. And of course, as Eckhard mentioned, we are talking about the integrity of our operation and our plans. So how can you see these areas of opportunities?
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. In my opinion, there have been significant advances with regard to these items, the environmental risk regulations, the safety risk regulations, the maintenance regulations. However, I think these advances could be a bit focused on documentation. So compliance needs documentation, but documentation does not mean compliance. So in my opinion, the key point of your question or the key point of my answer is self-regulation. I think with self-regulation and with the help of the regulator bodies, we can go through a better way for the oil and gas sector in Mexico. We have systems, we have equipment, we have people, we have sites with lots of procedures, with lots of good practices. We need to assume that the review of all of this is in our own. So talking about self-regulation, I think there's 3 best practices we can evaluate. The first one, frameworks. We can create, improve, collaborative, feedback providing frameworks with regulators, service providers, contractors, or people in order to talk. As it has been said, it's a good thing to talk a bit more and to know each other a bit more. The second best practice I propose, we have a lot of information. Information regarding to environmental items, information regarding to safety and security items, information regarding to maintenance items. Maybe we can use big data in order to analyze all this information and be proud of what we do in a good way and work in what good is better. So the first one, frameworks, the second one, data analysis, and the third one, use useful tools, modern tools. There's a lot of elements that we can use. Also, the 18 elements of the SAFISOPA that comes from Mexican administration are very interesting. We can use modern tools like process safety management, asset integrity. We can use digitalization. We can use e-learning. There's a lot of new elements, or not really don't new elements, but new elements nowadays that we can use in order to improve our achievement of goals. So that's my opinion, Alejandra.
Thank you, Francisco. Very interesting when you talk about self-regulation. It's really, as we can see, we really need to create a culture rather than really, have the policy requiring us to fill in forms and things like that, right? So certainly, and as you mentioned, these 3 points very critical, and one of them, the last one you mentioned about modern tools, that brings me to the issue about technology, really, how we incorporate technology and how we take new technologies really to improve our operations, specifically for safety and in this case for be able to operate at a distance, for example. So Gareth, coming back to you, how you and ABS see these new technologies? Which one do you think could be a couple of examples in your experience that is helping us with this?
Yeah. Certainly another great topic to discuss, which we could spend all afternoon talking about. Certainly when we think about offshore and onshore oil and gas facilities, they're hugely complex facilities in themselves, although sometimes the technology itself and the basic fundamentals haven't changed for many years. What's really changing around them are the tools that are available to manage them. And really those tools are bringing about benefits in a number of ways. Some of that is, for example, improved maintenance procedures, improved asset life as another example. And another one would be reduced manning possibilities there as well. And really when it comes down to it, one of the fundamental questions is how efficiently can these assets be run while still maintaining that critical safety level as well. Now, with regard to your specific question on some of the technologies, there are certainly technologies that are available during the design phase of these facilities. Some of those, as an example, would be leveraging our 3D or three-dimensional modeling capabilities to allow the visualization of that design during the initial design process. Some of that can include the introduction of the metadata into the models so that all that critical information is stored in one place. Another application of that would be the introduction of design checks into the design process itself, so that the design and the verification process can be completed simultaneously. And then moving on from the design phase into the actual operation phase of the asset itself, there's certainly the opportunity there to leverage tools and technology in that regard. The availability and ability to collect data on the performance of the asset, allowing a true understanding of its health condition at any particular time, allowing critical decisions to be made on that basis. When we think about these aspects, there's a couple of things that come to mind. Number one is the data infrastructure and how we're setting that up. It obviously takes some planning up front in that regard. The second aspect that we need to think about is the cybersecurity aspects to make sure we're not introducing any vulnerabilities. And then last but not least, we need to think about the personnel aspects. As we introduce this technology, the question is, what impact does that have on the personnel? Not just from the particular application and using that piece of software or that tool, but the broader aspect of working in a digital environment. And as we continue to evolve as an industry, that's an area that we certainly need to continue focusing on to make sure that we don't forget about that critical human element aspect.
Thank you, Gareth. Certainly you bring a couple of very good points here, and I figure out there is a lot of aspect to look into this. Ek, how do you think about these technologies also in terms of looking for safety and integrity of our operations? Could you add a couple of examples of what you are seeing?
Yes, I think Gareth touched on a lot of good points there. One important thing, I think, with a lot of room in Mexico is to unman installations. Right now, there's a lot of personnel still offshore and for operations and maintenance, so that for sure could be reduced to introduce more advanced techniques. For example, in DMVGL, we had a pilot project a couple of years back for a completely unmanned FPSO, and basically for the research project to see what would be required to work this way. So there's a lot of room for sure to reduce it and to reduce the amount of people offshore. And then also, yes, as mentioned, remote is I think a big keyword here right now. So asset integrity management, the state of the art for that is to use the software suite to manage the integrity of assets in a holistic way, so that you can conserve the history of the activities performed for integrity and for maintenance. And you can update the risk profile of the different installations. So that then allows you to put all your different assets into one management dashboard. And that will provide the overview of and shows where possible integrity issues exist. And then you can drill down to the specific asset and see what the problem is. So that is basically a state-of-the-art approach of how to deal with asset integrity management. And for that, DMBGL, we offer the Synergy Suite for all types of on and offshore assets, including transport pipelines and gas distribution. And that can be either run on your servers or it can be run on the cloud nowadays. Apart also here in Mexico, we are now in the process of obtaining the accreditations for the new NOM 009 norm for pipeline integrity. So we are hopefully close to get that. For risk analysis, we are authorized by ASEA to provide all required risk analysis as per regulations for off and onshore projects, and we are supporting our clients in that. And also we've provided risk analysis for the Pemex PEP assets for the last 15 years and are now continuing to provide this under the ACREF contract umbrella. It's just starting up now. The risk services are supported by software like FAST, which is consequent software, which is prescribed by Pemex since many years. And also Safety, which is a more complete package for advanced risk analysis and other more specialized packages. A new service that we have developed now ahead of this called MyQRA. So it's a digital service, and instead of delivering a static report, a PDF report to our clients, we are providing a software model, and then our clients can use that to run different scenarios and modify the input data and see how that affects the risk outcome. So in summary, there are many tools out there to support these activities, but of course it's important that there's money for that the operators provide sufficient budget to manage the integrity of their assets. If not, accidents will occur for sure. And especially now with the low oil price situation.
Well, thank you. Certainly a lot of tools to be available at the market for several to attract taking these problems. I would like to back to Jose Luis, and from the point of view of the regulator, and of course we mentioned in your initial talks that communication has been one of these tough problems during this pandemic, and I can imagine that also things like the inspections and other problems has been sourced and has been very complicated during these times. So what do you think has been the main obstacles from this collaboration and cooperation between the regulator and the operators and you know, all the players in the industry?
Bien, gracias. Creo que de entrada, pues romper con esa mecánica tradicional de la comunicación en donde teníamos la disponibilidad en oficinas para recibir a los regulados, la interacción continua en una forma ya muy, digamos, estructurada. Nosotros suspendimos actividades por, digamos, disposiciones gubernamentales la última semana de marzo, y prácticamente esa semana y todo el mes de abril estuvimos fuera de servicio, es decir, no hubo atención a regulados en el tema de evaluaciones y autorizaciones que se pudieran derivar de esto, y más o menos del mes de mayo a finales de agosto, por disposiciones de nuestro director ejecutivo, se abrió un día por semana, un día hábil para recibir trámites y un día también para atender requerimientos de los propios regulados en el tema de supervisión, inspección y vigilancia. A finales de agosto más o menos se abrió, dada la gran demanda, también los propios regulados empezaron a adoptar sus medidas de control, digamos, para ir normalizando sus actividades. Y desde finales de agosto y hasta el día de hoy se tienen abiertos 3 días a la semana. martes, miércoles y jueves como días hábiles para atender, digamos, a los regulados. Esto trae algunas ventajas en cuanto a los tiempos, digamos, desde el punto de vista legal, para atender requerimientos, pero también son un poquito más tardados porque para contestar al regulado también, digamos, cuenta estos tiempos para poder contestar de una manera afirmativa o no. Lo que comentaron me pareció muy interesante. Si tuviéramos regulados autorregulados, eso sería lo ideal. Obviamente la regulación está disponible y es obligatorio su cumplimiento. Sin embargo, debemos vigilar que eso se cumpla lo mejor posible dentro de la administración de riesgos. Tenemos, y ustedes lo saben, un sistema de administración de la seguridad conocido comúnmente como SASISOPA, y para esto lo más importante del SASISOPA, la parte más sustantiva, son los procedimientos de operación y las prácticas seguras. Pero para que estos sean utilizados en las instalaciones y actividades, se requiere personal que esté apto físicamente y mentalmente alerta. Este fue el cambio más importante de la pandemia porque, de acuerdo a los perfiles de puesto, algunos experimentados, digamos, en cuestiones técnicas, pues obviamente no lo podían de acuerdo a los perfiles de salud. La agencia abrió la posibilidad de hacer foros para compartir experiencias con los regulados en temas particulares como SASISOPA, y les comento que tuvimos una participación en un foro SASISOPA comercial más SASISOPA industrial de más o menos 1,600 personas. Al final organizamos un Kahoot y nos dicen los regulados que lo que quieren son más foros, cursos, talleres, esto una tercera parte, y otros también que se agilicen, digamos, los trámites que ellos tienen en curso. Esto juntos son un 50%. Esto nos habla que debemos de adaptar lo mejor posible y lo más rápidamente posible también los mecanismos de trabajo y de comunicación entre regulado y regulador.
Certainly, the huge challenge about time in all the process, right? So we are running a little bit on time, but I would like to back to Francisco. And let me get your impression about talking a little bit on the future in the next year or year and a half. How do you see the investment trends on integrity and safety? Have you comment on that? Because yes, I think we will be facing low prices for still kind of months more. And especially if you see how the global markets are moving on and still a lot of inventories outside there. So how do you see these trends in the next year and a half?
Yes, well, in theory, all the investments on environmental items, health, safety, maintenance should increase in theory, because as it has been said, we are in a virus situation, in a pandemic situation, and we are reviewing all the investments. In my opinion, there will be two key points: being more efficient and being more prepared. Being more efficient, all the investments in tools and technologies in order to have a better maintenance, have a better health and safety standards will be critical. Solutions like asset integrity, asset monitoring systems online in real time, and all the use of mobile devices in order to be quicker to resolve problems in the site will be a good point of investment. The other point, being more prepared. I think the COVID-19 time has taught us that we must be more prepared for the usual and also more prepared for the unusual, the unexpected. So tools like business continuity plans or studies like this sure will show us how to prepare our system, prepare our people to unexpected situations like a pandemic or maybe another type of catastrophe. In resume, in my opinion, being more efficient and being more prepared will generate a lot of opportunities of investment in the next 2 years.
Thank you, Francisco. Certainly very critical. And I have been hearing from basically all of you how to prepare our personnel, how is not only if you get into a new technology, a new software or whatever, and have the people well training, but also be prepared in terms of how to act in a, very unexpected situations and how to follow all the preparation, all the protocols, etc. So we have a couple of minutes more. I think we have some questions from the public. So I open it for whoever you want to answer. Here we say, what kind of synergies between regulators and operators have come together to facilitate safety compliance during the COVID-19 pandemic? I think Jose Luis mentioned a little bit on how they open these panels and trying to communicate, but I don't know if someone else of you want to add something.
Bien, pues yo quiero retomar nuevamente los foros. La verdad que estamos muy contentos. A finales de agosto tuvimos el foro relacionado con SACISOPA comercial y el 21 de octubre, la semana pasada, tuvimos el de SACISOPA industrial. Y la verdad que tuvimos una gran cantidad de preguntas que mediante un blog se están compartiendo, incluso el mismo resultado de la pregunta esta de Kahoot, que tenía que ver cómo se podría mejorar el desempeño en seguridad desde el punto de vista SACISOPA en este problema de contingencia. Y les digo, mucho tiene que ver con esos foros, cursos y talleres que nosotros como reguladores tenemos que propiciar el mejor entendimiento de las disposiciones que tenemos publicadas. Es decir, una comunicación continua y pues estamos abiertos para ello.
Thank you, Jose Luis.
And Alejandro, I can certainly add a few additional comments on top of that.
Thank you.
Early in the event, back in the March and April timeframe, we were receiving a lot of questions and queries with regard to the best approaches and the best practices, particularly with regard to cleaning and disinfecting the assets. And as you know, at that time, there was a lot of uncertainty. Certainly the general guidance was difficult to come by at that stage. And ABS reached out to many of our clients that have the assets themselves and also worked with public health officials and came up with specific guidance, which we have published on specifically how to clean and disinfect assets, both onshore and offshore. And that addressed the various chemicals that can be used, whether that's bleach or some of the chemicals like thymol, which have emerged recently. And not only that, but their impact on the assets themselves, both the structure of the asset and on the outfitting, whether that's the panels in the quarters or the electrical cabling. And the idea of that guidance was to provide support on the best approaches to use in each environment.
Thank you, Gareth.
Quick one.
I think
we do provide a certification of being like COVID-19 ready if you want to reopen an office, or we can provide it also for assets, for installations, for ships, for platforms, for all kinds of installations. So we have a procedure, And then in the end, we inspect it, we go through all the measures that have been taken, and if it's all compliant, then we issue a certificate that this installation is ready to be manned again or to be put in operation again.
Thanks, good. Well, I think we are really running out of time, so I would like to thank all of you, but I also would like to hear if you have some extra comments, some ending or closure comment that you want to add. I think we can go with a very, very quick round of ending words for our audience. So if we can start with Francisco.
Okay, well, for me, as a resume of all we have been talking about, I think we are in a very weird year with the COVID, but we have a lot of opportunities here. The society must know that the oil and gas sector in Mexico wants to be proud of what this sector is doing nowadays. So we have the opportunity, we have modern tools, as we have said, and we must be more efficient and being more prepared for the next 2, 3, or 4 years with a lot of doubts about what is going to happen.
Thank you, Francisco, and certainly efficiency, low cost, better safety work. Eckhard, do you want to add some conclusion for this?
Yeah, I think every crisis is also an opportunity, and we can see that here as well, of course. For example, the remote service that I mentioned, that a lot of clients, especially in Mexico, were a bit skeptical before the crisis whether that will work. And now we tried it out, and it's working better than expected. So I think it's a great opportunity to do more of that, because that will be safer for everyone, less costly, less travel, and all the rest of it.
Absolutely, we prove all these needs. Gareth, if you want to add some final words.
Sure, absolutely. We like to think that in today's environment, more so than ever, success is really a team sport. To be successful in the current environment, given the challenging economic environment, given the challenges of the COVID-19 situation, given the fact that our world is becoming increasingly complex and increasingly connected, to be successful, companies need to work together to collectively understand the risks and to identify those. From an ABS perspective, we try to live that mantra by reaching out, engaging with our clients, and co-developing solutions that really address those items.
Thank you. Certainly an effort for all that we need to do, and that includes, of course, the regulator. José Luis, if you want to add final words.
Sí, muchas gracias. Pues obviamente nosotros como Agencia de Seguridad, Energía y Ambiente estamos abiertos a nuevas ideas por parte de cualquier interesado en mejorar la seguridad. Obviamente seguiremos a petición de nuestro director ejecutivo trabajando en esos foros para mejorar ese entendimiento y pues que finalmente nos van a dar una nueva normalidad. No sabemos cuándo vaya a terminar, sin embargo creo que ya agarramos una muy buena velocidad de trabajo y pues a todos a seguirnos cuidando para tener la posibilidad de ver esas mejoras en un futuro próximo. Muchas gracias.
Well, thank you very much for all, not just for participating in this panel and sharing with us some of these very important issues, but for all your day-to-day work on working on a safety environment for all of us in these operations and very critical situation as the pandemic that we are going through.